right. Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Municipal Building Design Committee. Let's go through this. In accordance with the requirements of open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel. The recording of this meeting will be available on the Lunenburg Public Access YouTube channel within 24 hours. We also have some new language, standard language that we have to read here. Additionally, please be advised that the town of Lunenburg utilizes the Zoom platform as host for its hybrid and remote meetings, that the Zoom platform utilizes AI technology known as AI Companion to create audio transcriptions of meetings to aid in the subsequent preparation of meeting minutes, and that AI Companion is activated immediately upon launching the Zoom application. You are hereby notified that this AI technology may capture audio prior to the start of the meeting and/or following the conclusion of the meeting. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. Public participation is encouraged, and public comments may be welcomed during committee member discussions at the discretion of the chair. All right, do we have any public comments this evening from the board? Any public comments from APDC rep?
None.
Any public comments from the public? All right, let's go ahead and jump straight into the meeting. Plan ahead for Brooks House, and then plan ahead for TC Passios. All right. I communicated to the select board that although that we had kind of taken on this charge, that due to time and other priorities that we have been unable to make too much progress or any real progress on this. And one of the requests coming out of the select board is what is the actual committee's recommendation for disposition of the Brooks House? When I went back to our sheet and looked at it, it said demolition or other municipal purposes. But why don't we first start by just talking about the Brooks House? And Tony, do you happen to have that charge handy, the new one, for what we're supposed to be doing?
What the town voted on at special town meeting was basically that the select board would prepare documents that would make the Brooks House available for either lease or sale. The intent was to get the select board to figure out how much of the property associated with the Brooks House could be used to entice someone to come and either lease on a long-term basis or buy the Brooks House at that location. It was not to move the Brooks House because the town has already voted on that, and there's not been any takers. So the charge was for the town to present to the annual town meeting audience a description of how the Brooks House could either be leased on a long-term basis or sold. So that was what was approved at the November special town meeting.
All right, so I'm just pulling it up just to get the actual language here, and I have it on my iPad, so I can't share the screen. I'll just read through the details. I think, Tony, you just gave a great summary. That is exactly what it is. But I will just read through the details of what our tasks are. So first was defining a lot of minimally compliant size for the property that includes at least 4 parking spaces as part of the property. The second was conveying to the buyer or leasee and their successors and assigns a non-exclusive perpetual easement for the purpose of using up to 8 additional parking spaces nearest to the property to accommodate customers of any business located therein from the lot of the town-owned library on 1023 Mass Ave. 3, conveying to the buyers or leasees and the successors and assigns a non-exclusive perpetual easement. Am I reading the old one, or is this the one that got approved? Okay.
That's the one that got approved.
conveying to the owners or leasees and their successors and assigns a non-exclusive perpetual easement for the purpose of using the existing driveway and parking lot of the town-owned property, excuse me, of the town-owned library on 1023 Mass Ave for the purpose of vehicular and pedestrian access to the property. 4, consulting with the school committee and relevant parties on the recommendations to be contained in the report. 5, advising on the terms and conditions the select board deems reasonable and necessary to protect the interests of the town. And 6, advising on the methods and cost of placing the property for sale or lease by appropriate legal means at the town's disposal with the intent of offering the property for sale or long-term lease by October the 30th, 2025, and continually retendering the offer until the property is sold or leased. So when I brought this up with the select board again, I think it was last week, we've had conversations previously on the select board about kind of long-term disposition. So let me just stop talking for a moment and let's just kind of ideate, if we can, a little bit about the Brooks House and kind of what we need to do next steps to support the select board and making some progress on this.
Isn't there a bunch of work that needs to be done on the property? That was from, I can't remember the name of the report. There was a couple of reports out there from a few years ago, and they were like a lot of money. But the foundation, I think, was something, or there was, in order for us to lease it or sell it, I mean, we could sell it, I guess, and someone just takes it as is, but to lease it, we're going to have to do a lot of work to it. I think that was kind of one of the negatives of having it as a space that we would use, because we didn't want to put the money into the building. But I don't remember the exact figures of, and the figures are probably like 10 years old now anyways, but what the figures were of the work that needed to be done.
Tom, I had asked Chris Ruth to give me a tour of the building just to see exactly what it looked like and what what the potential for the building would be. And I think that overall, I was satisfied that this is a building that you could make available for sale as is, and it would potentially have some interest on the part of a buyer or a long-term lease. It does have, some problems, but nothing, like the foundation is pretty solid. There are some things that, some stones that have to be kind of, repositioned. But overall, it's an old house that I think has a fair amount of value. If we were willing to put it out there for sale at that location, it would be a lot more expensive and this is one of the reasons why I don't think anybody actually took the time up on the offer, is that like to move the facility requires a lot, which now means you have a fair amount of money involved in that, and B, the expense of actually putting it on some sort of a conveyance vehicle and dealing with the overhead utilities and getting into that lot. But as it stands, I think the place has got, a fair amount of potential, for someone to either buy it and fix it up or to lease it on a long-term basis with the potential for fixing it up. The APDC, which put the warrant on the before the town at the special town meeting in November, we did not intend on having the town spend money to fix up the building so that it could then be disposed of. I mean, the whole idea behind this is to take what we've got and figure out a way to get someone else to do that. Now, I don't think that we're talking about selling this for $400,000 or $500,000. I mean, I think that that was never our intent. The intent was to get it into hands of someone who could use the facility and it not cost the town any money to continue to maintain it and to keep an eye on it. I mean, that was the whole idea behind this, is to make, a document that would entice someone to come and take the building off the town's hand, or take the building off Lunenburg's hands. But it's really, I mean, I was surprised, I went in the basement. I always love to go in basements of old buildings because that's really where you see things, that become showstoppers. But it has a relatively new power panel. I mean, the one thing that's a big turn off to people is that the joist hangers on the steps that lead into the main entry, those joist hangers need to be rehung, because they've come loose. So but those, in my mind, those are cosmetic things. Those aren't structural or, real showstoppers for someone to take the building on.
Christina had her hand up.
Yeah, so I have a question, Tony, because you said they put a new power panel, and I know before one of the issues with this building was the power. So has the electrical been upgraded to make it?
It looks like it was probably upgraded, I don't know, maybe 5, 10 years ago, somewhere in that time frame. But it has a 200 amp panel in the basement. I'm not sure exactly when the last person that was working in that building left. It's my understanding from talking with Chris Ruth that it was the facility manager, the person who preceded him that did a great job apparently, but then eventually, left the town. I don't know whether he retired or we got relocated someplace else. So, but once again, there are things that need to be done with the building. But if you say to someone, you can have this building, but you have to fix it up, then you determine whether it has true value for either lease or sale. I mean, the property itself, has, I think, a fair amount of value because of where it's at. And we constantly keep hearing in discussions related to the town's master plan that people want more things to be in place in what I call downtown Lunenburg or the village district or the APDC. At some point, this is how you make those things show up.
Dave?
So I guess I come from a different side of this thing. So first of all, the panel was upgraded with the last tenant, which was the Lunenburg Ledger.
I don't
So
know.
it was the
I don't
town
know.
never upgraded anything. It was always used as like a facility. The school facilities guys just used it because it was there. In fact, I think it was John Londa was the last one who actually used it.
That's the
And you
name I
guys-
heard.
And you
Yeah.
guys know how long John's been gone for, probably
16?
close to 6 years now.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if it's been
And
that
after that, it
long,
was the
but yeah.
ledger. But I think my issue is more of the number of parking spaces we're talking about. The library does not have a lot of parking spaces to begin with. And if something's going on in that community building center, it fills up. You just told me that we're gonna give up 4 to 8 spaces at the library for somebody to have to whoever leases this building. And then the other side of it is, if you're gonna sell it, are you selling parking spaces? Are you selling part of the school, the library lot, so that they have a place to park? I mean, my personal feeling still is, resurrect the town bonfire, watch the fire department practice saving somebody's life on the second, saving somebody's life, and burn the damn thing down and be done with it forever. And just put parking spaces at that lot and be done. I think we're just this is like owning a boat. Let's put it that way. You just keep throwing money into the water.
Dave, we don't want to own the boat. We want to see if somebody else wants to own the boat.
Right, but you,
And I think in terms of
Tony, but
parking,
you're giving up. Look at how much you're giving up. You have to give them, you
okay,
have to give them a third of the parking lot.
let's talk specifically about parking. First of all, when we, the APDC, explored the idea of presenting this as an issue for the town to vote on in November, I met with both the library director and his board chair and his board vice chair. And I said, and of course, that was the first thing that they brought up was parking. And I says, look, I don't know enough about your parking to say that this is a good thing or a bad thing. But what I do know is that we would never propose something, we would never expect the town to propose something that would be a negative impact on the library. No one wants to do that. Now, in terms of parking, you know, we have a big hole in the ground between the Brooks House and the parking lot for the library. And that is a stormwater retention basin, which could be converted into parking. And that might be something, and it's currently not parking right now. And that might be something that goes into the statement of work or the proposal for, you know, putting this thing out, you know, for someone to consider, is to say, hey, you could create an underground stormwater retention basin by installing the engineered structures to do that. And it's not that expensive. I have had experience in putting in underground stormwater retention structures. They're big plastic barrels or half barrels, and then you know, you backfill over top of them. And we're not talking about millions of dollars to create additional parking. But the other thing is, I'm not sure the library knows how much parking they need, because, you know, that was the question that I had for, you know, for Muir, was to say, you know, do you know what your parking requirements are? And, you know, and I guess it's like when this measure passed at the November town meeting, I immediately went to Carter and said, how can the APDC help? And Carter says, well, he says, you know, I was thinking that what we would do is that we would draft language associated with a long-term lease or sale, similar to what I had done in my previous assignments. And that we would come up with, you know, how much space and how much ground would be a part of a proposal that would go out to say, if you take this property, this is how much you get. This is, you get the house, you have to fix it up, you have to tell us how you're going to fix it up. And Carter was all ready to do that. And Carter had great experience. I don't know whether you knew this or not, but Carter had a real-time experience in converting an abandoned school, similar to what Lunenburg had at the old primary school location, and turned it into a very viable project. Took the historic properties off the town's hands, and it went into a corporation that is currently renovating that old primary school in the town where he was at, so that it could become market rate housing as well as some subsidized housing, you know, at that location. You know, so this is, I mean, I guess, yeah, we could tear it down, we could throw it away, we could burn it, we could get rid of it, but why? I mean, it's like we could create maybe some value by letting someone take that property on, as long as we protect the town's interests. With regards to parking, I don't disagree with you, is that I wouldn't want to give away any parking that the library needs. I absolutely positively would not propose that. But I think that we need to explore, how much is that? Could you make up for it by saying, hey, if you want parking, you would get it with the capturing that stormwater retention basin. I don't know whether you've driven by there and looked at that stormwater retention basin, but it's ugly. You know, it's a mosquito trap. It's a place that doesn't add anything to the ambiance of coming to the library. And I think that if we did get a way to cover that up and turn it into some parking, it might actually be a plus rather than a negative.
I want to go to Christina, and then I'm going to come to Matt because I have a question for you, Matt. Christina?
So I just wanted to raise 2 points. So I've been at the library the past 2 Saturdays, and that front parking lot and to the side fills up. There's no available parking on a Saturday. So when you think of when a business is busy, it would be on the weekend. So the library has no free play on spaces. And then you also have to consider, now that it's getting spring out, the playground behind the library has almost no parking. So people park along the school. So like spaces that could potentially be used that way. But I was trying to think, because I drop my daughter off at TCP 4 days a week, and we drive by that place. You talked about first 4 spaces. So are you talking about 4 spaces on the property? Because they could extend that further and potentially make more without touching the water and getting into the library. But again, to Dave's point, I don't know who would want to rent that. Like, I know we're trying to say commercial, but honestly, I'm kind of wondering if it's better to sell it to a private person who would fix it up as their home, because then parking wouldn't be an issue and they'd have more care to keep it historic. than a business would. It's
How do
just,
you-
I get,
Christina, how do you know that?
I don't know, but I mean, that's a big overhaul for a business because it's a tough spot. It's just a weird spot.
It's a great spot. It's got fantastic street presence, you know,
Well,
But look at
in
the
terms
place on
of
the corner.
traffic on Mass Avenue. You know, the town is actually dealing with a similar issue on the other side of Main Street where the old gas station was.
yeah, before we
It-
get to that though, Tony, if I
It's
can,
it's the same thing. We didn't throw that away. You know, we went out and created a plan for that. And that's all we're saying is that let's see if we can create a plan.
so, yeah, the old gas station, different, I think that's just a different conversation. We just, took possession of that in the last couple of years. Christina, did you have any other thoughts that you wanted to share before I ask Matt a question?
No, that's it.
All right, and I want to add on to something you said as well. Matt, so my question for you is, as I remember when the library was built, that pond that we're talking about, we don't need to dig too heavily into this, but that was a condition, as I recall, of the library building. Is my memory on that one correct?
That is exactly my memory of it. And as we were talking about subterranean infiltration areas, I think that that's probably part of the limiting factor on the hill right there. You don't know where the ledge is, and the substandard drainage design of the brand new middle high school that comes out right above your house, I think you're aware of, right? That wasn't, I mean, it was reviewed, but it wasn't, the comments weren't reviewed. And can I go ahead and make my comments now?
Of course.
Of course. So I agree with Dale. I think that the land that building is on is extremely valuable. And I think that the building that's on that land is a liability to the town. And financially, and in numerous other ways, I think it's starting to become an eyesore, right? Almost as bad as the detention pond next to the library. But again, I mean, we're talking about land division. The TC Passios, I mean, we're talking about tearing that down. That's 50,000 square feet of usable space. It needs some repair, but I wouldn't be interested in spending a dime on the Brooks House. And there's no land division. The TC Passios is still part of that 55-acre school campus. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of other things that have needed to have been talked about for a long time. And to just throw this in our lap right now, and plus, I mean, we've got a town meeting warrant article coming up to discuss. I don't think we have. So I think there's more pressing issues than the old fallen down Brooks House. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Matt. I do expect that we are not, our goal here tonight is not to try to make a report in detail for the Springtown meeting. We're definitely missing that deadline. But it is to be able to give some feedback to the select board on kind of what our thoughts are. Greg?
Yeah, there's a detention basin on the other side too, just so everybody knows. The Brooks House is completely surrounded by D basins and parking. So just so everybody understands, there's a detention basin between the library and the Brooks House, and there's one between the Brooks House and the school access drive. But I agree with Matt and Dave. I've been pretty outspoken on this over the years. I really don't think, so I have a couple of comments on this front. I think that we've gotten pushback from mixing uses, even putting town office uses on the school campus. I really don't think anybody's going to be in support. I think there's going to be a strong contingent of people at town meeting that's not in support of selling a piece of town property that's currently right in the middle of town-owned land. I get that the library is on a different piece of parcel, but it's still town-owned property. And this parcel is right on the town campus. I just don't think there's much support for it. But be that as it may, I mean, if the select board asks us to do something, I mean, we could find a way to subdivide the thing. I mean, so that it's in the village center district, which gives us flexibility with respect to frontage. It doesn't have any minimum area requirements. It does have parking requirements, which relate to use. So that's a little bit of an issue. But you know, we could come up with something conceptually, a way to subdivide it, and create easements and things. So I guess there's two different discussions.
Yep.
One is if the board's looking for a recommendation from our board, then I wouldn't be in favor of giving one, of doing anything with it, but other than tearing it down. But if the board wants to utilize this board to determine if there is a way to subdivide it and market it, we could do that. So I guess I just wanted to opine on that point.
All right, let me offer my opinions as well. It sounds like, and Christina, let me make sure I captured your feedback here correctly. And I might ask you just to restate it here for me. Rhonda, would you mind?
Oh,
Rhonda, you can
sorry.
jump in here if you want to add something.
I actually did have a comment.
Yeah,
Ron
sure.
Delizio, 181 Reservoir Road. Just that I think the end of what Mr. Roy just said was what was asked of the committee, to figure a way to subdivide it in order to, you know, the voters voted at the last meeting to have the select board move forward with some kind of a plan for possible sale or lease. And that hasn't been done. So, I mean, we can all have our own opinion, but I think the task was the task. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Rhonda. Christina, I wanted to capture your feedback correctly. What was the vision that you had? And I just want to make sure I'm writing it correctly, Christina.
That I don't know how much parking they have, but I would not put it anywhere near library parking and take for that. But I don't know, because of all the work that has to get done, if this would be feasible to sell to a business. So I didn't know if it would be possible to sell to like a private residential. And I think the town would like maybe feel better about that as a whole, instead of having a bunch of random people coming and going near the school district. That maybe, you know, having a family live there and preserve it would be a better option.
All right, so I want to offer my own thoughts, and then after this, we'll kind of try to take this apart in different sections. I'm on board with Dave and Matt and Greg, and you can count me in there. I think this would be a great training exercise for the Lunenburg Fire Department. And so, you know, I think that as a next step, and I want to go back to Rhonda's point here as well, you know, I do think the select board is looking for our general sentiments on this. I did relay that I understood it to be demolition, but that, you know, we were going to approach the charge that they've given. I do think it's helpful feedback to go back to the board and advise that, you know, the majority of this committee still supports demolition. So, you know, it is I think that the main thing is what's the long-term use, right? And while I think you all know that generally what I do professionally is manage and kind of redevelop a lot of buildings. Almost all of it is historic. I don't know if I've touched many properties that don't have some historic relevance to them, but I sit on a different side of the aisle than many historical preservationists, in that I think that there's a cost limitation. Once you get to a certain cost, people who are in the building space, you know, don't have emotional attachments to buildings unless they have a really strong, clear history of kind of connections to them. Most people, it's just dollar and cents and what's the cheapest or least expensive, most affordable path ahead. And this building comes with challenges. I think that we need to schedule a tour of it, so that way we can get our eyes on it. You know, my read of the building is a little bit different than Mrs. Scolambrini's read of the building. And I know that Chris Ruth and the town manager also have pretty strong opinions about the Brooks House building that I think are a little more aligned with what the majority here thinks, that it may be, you know, kind of to the point of demolition. But I don't want to discount the good work on the architecture preservation district, that of course, if there's a building that we can salvage and get into private hands and doesn't cost the taxpayers any money, then let's try to pursue it. So long-term use, if we can kind of just separate this out into portions of conversation, what is the long-term use that is feasible for this property?
Well,
I don't think we know that, Michael Ray.
exactly.
And I'm gonna go back to what Rhonda said. This discussion does not follow what the town voted the select board to do in November. It did not, the vote was not for the select board to come back to a recommendation in May that said we want to demolish the Brooks House. That's not what the recommendation that the town voted on in November. And as one of my old engineering professors used to say, when all else fails, follow directions. And the direction that the town got, that the select board got from the town at the November meeting, was to come up with a plan that would allow for sale or lease.
All
Now,
right.
that doesn't
So,
necessarily
Tony, I
mean
wanna-
that that's going to happen.
If I can jump in here, Tony, I think that on this committee, our role here is, of course, to be advisory and supportive to the select board. But the overall charge of this committee is to identify and help support the long-term disposition of our properties. So I think that what I wanted to identify today first is, has it changed from when we last discussed this? When we last discussed this and put on the list, the majority of this committee wanted to demolish the Brooks House. It sounds as if we are consistently holding that viewpoint. So I do want to, I think that there's kind of two things here. The first is, has the opinion of the members of the committee changed? The answer to that one is no. That is worth going forward with. The other part of this is, on a non-binding resolution, I understand that it's guidance nonetheless. The select board and the town manager still retain full authority over what to do with town properties. This property, the Brooks House property, we can sell the building. We cannot sell the land, and there's not much of an appetite to sell the land. But when I say long-term use, while we may not know on a use table who that end user is going to be, what I mean by this is long-term use, given the limitations of what we have on that site. What do we envision here as the potential use? Office building. Do we think that this could be a property that could be expanded upon to be some kind of retail establishment? Because all of these things factor into your egress requirements, coming in and out, where that parking potentially could be. So long-term use, if we just think about this building being where it's at, and I'm going to ask the committee here, what is that ideal long-term use? The building's not getting demolished in this example. What is that minimal impact long-term use that we think could work there? Office, retail, Dave?
Guys, I'll tell you, a used car, well, if we're following you with Lunenburg business, it'll become a used car lot. Because that seems to be the only thing that we seem to be getting in this town is more used car lots sitting on the zoning board. But I say, I don't know. We can't really say what business is in there. We really can't say who can have it, who can't. I mean, my personal feeling is if you're going to sell it, I'd like to see it only go residential. But if that's the case, I need to give somebody some land so that kids can do, so a family can do something there. But for a business, do I really want to have it where a business owns it outright? And therefore I have no authority as to really what happens other than saying, what business could possibly go in there or not. I'm not a big fan. And the other side of this is, I feel like the select board couldn't figure this out. And at the last minute, they're saying to us, ooh, you suckers, you figured this out for us. Because this is not our charter. Our charter was to figure out certain buildings, how to merge town offices and accommodate the school. That was our charter. This is not doing either of that.
I completely agree with that, Dave.
All
So-
right.
And that's the reason why Carter's plan, after the town vote took place in November, Carter was going to prepare the documents and present those back to the select board. But the chair of the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee said, oh, that's something that we should deal with, which I completely disagree with, because it's not part of our mission. I think that had Carter been given the charge to come up with the documents, the plan, how the building could be released, for a proposal, I think we would have been much further along. I also want to tell you that after I discovered that the board that the chair of the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee wanted to take this on as part of the work of this committee, I actually went to Cesar Nozello and said, this committee doesn't have the time to do this. I went to him in early January and said, this committee doesn't have the time to do that. And he said, well, I'll talk to Carter. And unfortunately, that conversation never took place. And Carter told me, he says, Tony, the select board assigned this task to the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee based on the chair agreeing to do that. And I think that that's one of the reasons why
Tony, I think
we're struggling with
let me
this.
jump in here. Tony, you are correct in that when this charge was identified in November, but in terms of the functioning of this meeting, it is going to be very challenging for us to have a conversation if you respond to every single comment that someone makes. So I need to be able to go around the horn here and get the feedback from everyone. But
I just want to address the facts. That's what I'm trying to do.
And I'm not going to dispute what is factually correct. The charge that came through, stepping back from this a little bit, it is very clear that the APDC did not agree with us that when it came to demolition being the disposition that we identified for this building. And so what they did was they decided to come forward and try to get the select board to come up with a different plan. And so that different plan, as charged to the select board, we've just gone over it. The select board decided to task our committee out with it. I felt confident that given that this committee is made up of property professionals and others who've been working in this space for a long time, that we would be better positioned to be able to have the type of conversation we're having right now around this. Compared to the existing members of the select board who do not have that property and specific experience when it comes to properties and buildings. So, this would be a way for us to help them out. Nonetheless, I think that where we're at is that we're all in agreement on demolition. The next task that we need to do here to move this along, and we're going to kind of go to the next agenda topic here in a moment. The next things to kind of move this along are to kind of identify, first it's, do we even agree with what we've been asked to do? And I don't, and it doesn't sound like the majority of us do. And that's worthy feedback. I have a strong problem with selling off this property. I'm not open to that. And there's also, in my view, I don't know how much time we want to spend going in circles on something that we don't ourselves support. So, we need to be able to give that feedback sooner than later. So the first thing I want to handle here is separate lot. And the next stage of this, it would be to subdivide the property to create a separate lot for this building. Do we have interest in creating a separate lot or keeping the building within the parcel that it's currently sitting in? So that way it becomes a lease type arrangement rather than a sale type arrangement. So what are our thoughts on partitioning the lot off?
There's no way to partition that lot off. You're either cutting into the library, which is a downfall, or cutting into the school, which is a downfall. And keeping the property and leasing it, it's a huge money pit for the town. So unless there's a way to sell it, which it doesn't seem like there's a way, you cannot partition anything off. Like, sure, you could use the water barrier behind it to the bushes to technically partition it off, but you're not going to have enough parking for a business.
Greg.
I think that to dovetail onto Christina's point, I think we could partition it off. I mean, I'm looking at the map and I've been overlaying the village center district zoning requirements on there. But you would just also looking at the village center parking requirements, if we're gonna, parking requirements are completely dependent on the end user. Okay, which is completely dependent on a buyer or a lessor, however you say that. And we don't know what that is, so you'd have to take a conservative look. No one's gonna buy or lease this without having the required parking. Okay, so if we were gonna either create this as one, a parcel that could be conveyed, or two, an exclusive use area that could be leased, either of those things would need to include the required parking. Which in my view, the only place to do that is the parking spaces behind it that are attached to the library parking. It appears to me that at least some of those were probably planned, and it'd be interesting to look at the planning board records and see if we get a copy of that site plan. If there was any, if there was any designation, because it looks to me like some of those parking spaces at least were intended to provide access for the Brooks House. Fast forward 20 years, we may need them all now for the library, per Christina's point, which, things change over time. But anyway, my point is, if we're going to either create an exclusive use area to lease or a parcel to convey, we're going to have to do that with parking. No one's going to buy it without dimensionally compliant parking that's required by zoning. No business is going to go in there if there's no parking. Other uses, retail, professional service, liquor store, professional office, civic uses, artist space, restaurant or private club, bed and breakfast, mixed use, multiple commercial, all residential uses are allowed. Movie house, outdoor market, all these things require parking. So we would have to plan that in. I can't remember if I answered your question or not.
You have. Yep, coming to Tom next. So this is about partitioning off the land, and it does tie into the previous question, which is kind of what do we envision being that end use being, because parking is tied into that end use.
One more thing, I guess, if I could, Mr. Chair.
Of course.
I will say that it's probably a fairly simple exercise. If I could ever find a couple hours, I could probably sketch on how to do this. Okay, if the committee wanted to do this and to fulfill our obligations of those 4 or 5 points that you said to the select board, if we've committed to that, we can do that and say, you might say, listen, we took a poll and none of us think that this is a good idea, but if you were going to do it, this is probably how you would do it. We could do that. And I don't know that we needed, probably the best way is not to do that by committee. It's probably to designate somebody to draw some lines on a piece of paper that's compliant with zoning. And, we do have some expertise on the board in that regard. So on the committee in that regard. So that's all. So if we've committed to doing it and we've been asked to do it, we probably should do it. And I'm not saying we shouldn't also opine on our recommendation, but again, I'll just stress that if we've been asked to do it and we've committed to do it, we should probably do it.
Greg, I didn't want to tap you on this. I did reach out to Chris Riley previously, and I asked.
Good, that's even better.
Yeah, I know. I asked him while Mr. Scolenbrini was having those conversations with Carter. I asked if staff could draw out what potential parcels could be. And so I think we were hoping to get something from him a lot sooner than now on what, just kind of what options were. Matt, do you have any thoughts about, I think you've already said them, and I want to make sure they're right, about partitioning off the property, subdividing it, that you don't have much openness to that?
No, I'm not interested in subdividing it, but exclusive use area, with the parking, pretty much everything Greg said, I agree with.
All right. Dave, you're not in support of partitioning off? And Tom?
I would agree that that trying to create a situation where their commercial entity would go in there and I guess you could create it. Would somebody want it? I'm not an expert on that. I'm not a realtor. I don't know what the market will bear. But I do know that businesses come and go. And what happens if after 3 years they're out of business? I mean, does the town want to have to handle that? Do we have to evict them? I mean, being a landlord for something like this is a pain in the butt. And I think there's probably people on this committee and other people in town probably who have way more experience than I do on that, but it's not an easy thing to do. So I think we all kind of have rose-colored glasses on here. Said, well, we build it, they will come, and then it'll be wonderful. And it's not that way. So I would agree that with what has been said here, that I think the best use for us is as land, and just leave it at that. And it's way too much effort and time for a relatively small building. That's about it.
All right, Tony?
I talked to Chris Riley about the Brooks House, and he was ready to start working on it, but after the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee chair told the select board that this would be something that this committee would deal with, he was told not to do any more work on this project. And I think that I'm going to go back to what I keep saying, and that is what we're discussing doesn't meet what the town voted for in November. And, what the town said was that what the citizens said is that we want the select board to come up with a plan. If it turns out that you produce a plan that says you can buy it, you can sell it, or you can lease it for a long-term basis, you put a development project together that says, here's the terms and conditions that are important to the town. And let's say that someone says, I'm going to lease it for, 40 years. And then they can't manage the business and it goes belly up. Well, then that means the property comes back to the town, and then you dispose of it, if there's no one else that's willing to take it on. I was part of a group project where for the first time ever, the United States Air Force leased property to have a hotel built on Air Force property. And everybody had so many issues and so many concerns, and oh my God, this isn't going to work, And 40 years later, that hotel is still on Air Force property under a long-term lease agreement, and it has been deemed a success. And in fact, the owner of the original lease went bankrupt because he wasn't a very good business manager. And someone came in under that lease agreement and took over the property and is making money. What the town said was, we want you to prepare a package that would either make it available for lease or sale. And then you let the market make the decision. Now, when you put that package together, you need to have details like how many parking places, how does this fit with village district guidelines? Oh, which, by the way, on the other end of Mass Avenue, where the old gas station is, there's not really enough parking for that property to be viably successful. But under the village district bylaw, you can have parking as far away as 1,000 feet, and it satisfies the requirement for parking. And in fact, one of the examples that was used by the consultant that the town procured with the help of the Massachusetts Department of Development was an example of a gas station in Pepperell where there wasn't enough parking. Yet that business today is a very viable business and something that is very positively received by the people of Pepperell. So you know, like we can, you know, conclude this conversation by saying we don't want to do this. We think it's wrong, but it still doesn't meet the requirements that the town voted on in November.
Okay.
Tony, I would just remind you, this is not a select board meeting. It's a municipal building design committee meeting. The charge that the select board, the non-binding charge that the select board was given. Our role here is to be supportive, but we're not here to follow it. We're here to discuss it and see how we can be supportive. Dave?
Michael, I like Greg's solution. I mean, Greg's suggestion. The best thing for us to do for the select board right now is to say, if you want to subdivide this, here is a possible solution. And walk away. It's not my charter to tell them what they want to do with this or anything like that. That's for me to speak up during town meeting when they ask me to vote on this thing. But the fact of the matter is, from what I'm understanding about what the charge was for us, here's an option. If you were going to subdivide, here's an option of what it might look like. And be done with it. I think we're spending too much time on this thing for our own good.
Yep. Dave, I agree. So we're ready to move on here. I think that what I'm going to take away to the select board meeting tomorrow night is that we met where we discussed this, that I'm recording that Dave, Matt, Greg, and I all support this being demolished. That Christina has some real concerns about parking and how they affect the library. I drive by the library most of the time when I leave town because of where I live in town. And I see it on the weekends as well. That parking lot is overfull. People are parking down Memorial Drive. People are parking on the back side of the library. I don't think we have 8 parking spaces to give an easement to anyone with. So, you know, I think that I will communicate that feedback. The other part of this, in terms of how we can be helpful in subdividing the land, I will mention that we don't have minimum area requirements and that the property could be subdivided. Of course, there will be impact on the school committee. There will be impact on the library. And so I will reach back out to the land use director and see if he can provide that document that I thought he was working on months ago, and see if there's any path ahead. Greg, if you and your expertise would like to throw something together, feel free. And Matt, same to you and your expertise. If you want to throw something together, feel free. And let's bring it up for discussion at our next meeting. Sound fair? All right. Next thing on this agenda is the TC Passios. I want to pass over this for conversation purposes today. The only update I have is that there's still ongoing conversation about mothballing a significant portion of this building due to friable asbestos, which is what causes mesothelioma, that the water damage in the building is a little more extensive than previous, and so a larger section of the building is unusable. Also, we were advised that the school committee is looking to vacate this building because of the environmental issues, as well as the electrical issues and the water issues and the heat issues, that they are looking to vacate this building over the course of the summer, move their operations into Turkey Hill Middle School until there's a final plan for where the school committee can be. That point will render the entire central wing and the north wing of this building unused, and that would leave just the front portion of this building used, which we had identified previously as potentially being for a community center. Anything on that? That's just the update I had on GC Passios. All right, Brooks, next is the warrant article. So I do have the draft booklet here, but again, let me see if I can pull it up. The select board recently switched over everything from Google Drive to OneDrive and SharePoint. SharePoint's not as smooth with me as I would like on all my home Apple devices. The Google stuff works a little better. So I can't share the screen on the draft warrant article, but it's basically just a borrowing article. Let me go ahead and I sent out to everyone the updated numbers. Were there any questions anyone had on anything that came from Taylor and Burns? And I know they submitted a pretty significant document there toward the end. But any
Yeah.
questions? Yeah,
Yeah, I have one.
all right.
So I have two, I think relative to this point. First, did we get a number to plug in the estimate for asbestos abatement? For either the town hall or the Ritter?
Let me see how we left off on that one. Let me go to it. I was gonna go to that last page here and see what they threw in. I know that we increased contingency,
Yeah,
but let me just see if we threw in a cost for that unknown. Let me just check it. It's actually a lot of pages to scroll through. Greg,
no,
I'm
well, I remember they initially had explicitly excluded it. Or they didn't, maybe not exclude, maybe excluded is the wrong word, but if we've got it in the contingency, that's all right. I just think we need to have something in there for, I mean, even when I mean something in there, like even when we did the school project, we didn't have, you don't know what the asbestos removal cost is going to be until you've done it, right? You can't plan what it is until it's, you know what I mean? So it's almost like, but you just need to have an allowance for it so that we can have something to, to make sure that it's contemplated, because there's going to certainly be something.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a note of that. I will comb through this. So we had talked about that, adding that in.
Yeah.
And, increasing the contingency amount. As I'm scrolling through this right now, it's not sticking out to me. But
Yeah.
just
So,
I'll have to
I just want to make sure we have that. And then second, I guess the second question is, and maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse here, is I don't know that we ever agreed on the cost that we were going to put in the warrant article. And I don't honestly don't know exactly where we stand with that calendar, the time ticking here, but hopefully it's not too late, because I really think, I've said this before, I really think that we should have the cost that we're asking for, not modify the thing on the floor or tell people what it is on the floor, that when they get it in the mail, they should know what it is.
correct. So I'm just looking through the projection that came through. Let me go ahead and share the screen. Let me share the screen. Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay. So in the construction cost estimate that we received, which was the $18 million, and then they factored in additional cost here. They carried environmental testing and abatement, a lower amount, 183. Are you seeing this okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Great. Good.
And
Okay.
then so this is where we landed. And then
Great.
the total was at roughly 22 million.
This is great. Good. All right. I mean, the other good thing here is I'm maybe stealing Tom Gray's thunder, because I heard him attempt to answer this question at the public hearing last week at the FinCom. But furnishings, fixtures, and equipment, FF&E, I think is in here too, which is great.
Correct.
Almost $500,000. So that's good.
Correct. So
That's it.
Yep, I did give this over to the town manager and finance team as soon as we got it. And then did ask, and when I spoke with bond counsel to get cost estimates for what this would cost, it was at, I believe we used 23 million for the target there. But I'll verify that.
All right. I mean, again, I've said this before too. Sorry if I'm stealing people's thunder here, but in my opinion, we should take the cost estimate that we got from the professionals verbatim and put it in the warrant article and not round it. We should just say they told us it was going to be $21 million, $997,000 and 500, whatever that number was, and put it in there verbatim. so that there's no like, yeah, I know, no, we rounded it up by 1 million, and I really think we should just, we should just put it in there. Just the dollars and cents are what it is, and trust the experts. That's
Right.
it.
All right, anything else on the report that came in from Taylor and Burns? Any other comments, questions? All right, so next steps for us here today are we need to, and I apologize that I know did not have as much time at the house today as I'd hoped. So getting ready for town meeting, a couple things have come up. And one of them is the need to do some open houses. And so I wanted to throw this at you guys in terms of what the thought process was. So in addition to getting this cost estimate uploaded to the website, that we would have a couple of open houses in which we invite members of the public to come into some of these spaces that they normally can't get into, such as the basement of town hall, the attic area of town hall, and then to be able to walk around the Ritter building. So speaking with the town manager and Chris Ruth about any limitations in their schedule, they basically said, whatever we think is reasonable, they will accommodate. So, I think most people are available on weekends, they're available in the evenings, but I just wanted to throw out with you guys a couple of dates that may work well if we're all able to kind of pull up our calendars and just look at a couple of weekends. So we have Easter weekend coming. I know that that's also school vacation week. We probably don't want to do too much or anything on that weekend, but I think it would be helpful if for sure the weekend before that, the weekend of the 26th, if we had some open houses. I will be out of town, but that could work. We also can target we could do something this weekend if we wanted to, but I think school vacation week gives an opportunity because a lot of people will be home. So I just wanted to check in and just see if everyone's okay if I coordinate this with the staff and see when they're available to kind of open up the buildings. And really the point is to let people see what everything looks like and hand them information on what it could be. Any thoughts on this?
It's okay with me.
Go ahead, Greg, sorry, go
Well, I was
ahead.
just gonna say, it's okay with me. I'm out of town Saturday the 19th through Sunday the 27th. So I'm out those 2 weekends personally, but I think it's a good idea.
I was gonna say, same thing for me, is that I'm in town, but I think it's a good idea. And the other question is, could Passios be included in a tour?
Yep. And the only thing is certain portions of the Passios building, the town manager is going to require a waiver. And anyone coming into the Brooks house, the town manager is also going to require a waiver for anyone going into
Perfect.
the Brooks house.
That waiver should be as lengthy as possible, in my opinion.
I'd say the waivers for all buildings.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. With respect to the article, and with consideration of time, people's time, really only considering it on the article, the funding article here, for Town Hall and Ritter. So perhaps we should really just focus on that and try to handle Passios and Brooks House in a different time. But that's just a thought.
It could trigger, I think some people, without having an awareness of what the Brooks house looks like, it may seem like a viable solution for some, or, we also could provide information that we've come up with previously and the cost estimates for what it would cost to do the TC Passios building, which is more money. And it doesn't, of course, address these. So, I mean, we could coordinate to, but staff time is going to matter a lot. So I think that they may limit how many buildings we can get into on any one given day. But okay. The idea was Town Hall and Ritter.
I would leave it at those two buildings. That's what this vote's about. For some people who are making comments, they have no idea what's in those buildings. One comment I saw on Facebook was, oh, they're putting the roof on the town hall, so I guess it's all finished. Like, they don't even know that Ritter has office space there. It's just because that's the town hall, so they don't know the difference. So I think part of this, we should focus on exactly what's there now and what we're trying to accomplish, because I think that's going to give them the best information so that they can make a good decision.
All right. So we are going to have storyboards for town meeting, so I can go ahead and get those ordered sooner than later, so that way we have those storyboards for the open house.
Should we print, and I'm happy to do this here, as a donation to the town. You want to print a bunch of like colored, 11 by 17s of the building so we can hand out as people walking in?
Yeah, that'd be great, Greg.
If you want to send me, what you think we should print, I'll make sure I get however many copies. I don't know how many people were expecting at Springtown meeting, but several hundred, I would think.
Yeah, probably, especially given the discussions on the school budget this year and
Yeah, so I'll print off whatever, 200-300 packets of colored renderings. I think that would be good handout for people.
Any other thoughts about the open house? And we'll try to get as many dates as we possibly can, some evenings, some weekends, and I'll gladly take lead of any of them. Anyone else want to volunteer to take lead of any evening open houses? Obviously, we'll coordinate it with your schedule, but does anyone want to volunteer to do that between now and town meeting? I will work with you on your schedule.
So I'll kind of be there for whatever the tour is, but I wouldn't plan on giving a tour.
Okay.
So I could be the representative, the rep.
Okay. Anyone else want to volunteer to be a representative or tour guide? I think Chris Ruth and I have the tours down packed. But...
I will try to be. I will tell you that my meeting schedule is off the charts right now, so I will have a hard time committing here, but I'll be there if I can. I don't think I can be a lead. I don't think you should rely on me for a lead though, because it'll be
All right.
hard
Anyone
to...
else want to volunteer to kind of be primary? All right. So once we get those dates, I will send an email out. I'll coordinate that with Chris Ruth this week and make sure we get an email out that goes with the open house dates. I'll speak to Brian Leighton, so that way he's advertising it on social media, and then also we'll put something in the ledger so that way the members of the public can also be aware, and that will probably go out next Friday for the ledger. So Pam Porter, and then I'm just making my notes for Chris. Okay. And who knows how many people will show up. I'm sure we get more Facebook warriors than I don't see any of that stuff, but all right. So on the actual warrant article, when I met with or on the presentation, I don't have a draft for your review today, but we are meeting again. We're supposed to meet on the 21st, but it's a holiday in Boston. It's not a holiday out here. But many people will have that day off. But I can certainly float it around. I think what would be the best for a presentation is if you guys can review it, send me feedback, and then let me make some tweaks. And then when we meet again, let's see in real time if we can come up with as many other changes as we can think of. Thinking ahead, is the 21st going to be a conflict for anyone? Again, it's not a holiday here in town, but it is Tony's saying it's a conflict for him. Anyone else could have a conflict on the 21st? Greg?
I'll be in the Grand Canyon. I don't know what my schedule is going to be.
All right. Anyone else could have a conflict on the 21st? Nope. Is that Tom shaking his hand? Yes?
No, I don't have a conflict.
Okay. Okay. All right, so we'll plan to proceed on the 21st. In the presentation, so when I met with the finance committee and I went over the presentation that the architectural team prepared, they really liked that presentation, but something that they commented on and I agree with is that there needs to be more heart into it in terms of the reasons why, how we've landed here. So part of what I want this presentation to do, and let me just make these notes. Part of what I want this presentation to do is to give a history of what we have been working on, to go over our charge of what it is that, you know, we're tasked to do, how long we've been working on it, and, you know, a brief synopsis of the iteration of TCP. So that way, you know, we do have a plan, a dollar amount associated with that plan, shortcomings, pros, cons that we had identified previously. And then kind of get into the heart of most of what I think Taylor and Burns presented. I think there also needs to be a slide at the very beginning that really speaks to what the benefit is for the community. Because, you know, speaking of offices for staff, that's no one gets excited about that kind of stuff. But what I think that when you sell the community on the real, I think, strong selling points for the community in this project, to include the resolution of this building issue and how it frees us up long-term for other needs, I do think that that'd be helpful. So as you guys get this slide deck, please pay attention to those first several slides, especially the ones that I will create. So that way I can get some good feedback and try to capture it. Since we are going to meet on the 21st, I think it's advisable that our next meeting would naturally occur. We would not have another meeting before town meeting, but I do think it's advisable that we do try to squeeze in a meeting before town meeting, a couple days before if possible. So if we can just talk through that right now, I don't want to get too far ahead, but just talking through it. Anyone available on the 29th or the 30th or May 1st? For about 45 minutes to go over a presentation.
Every day but May 1st. That's my
All right.
49th wedding anniversary, and I'm not doing a Zoom call on my
Well,
49th
Tony,
wedding anniversary.
congratulations on that.
Can't blame me.
Yeah,
No, that's a big one, and next year is going to be pretty big too.
yeah.
All right, so 29th.
Generally speaking, at present, I am. What were you thinking? The same time here, 5:30?
Yeah, 5:30, like
Yeah.
6:15.
So I mean,
on,
that's usually fairly open. That time slot works for me most days. So
all right.
May 1st, I have a commitment, so I can't make that.
Which one?
May 1st,
Okay, well, let's talk about the 29th, which is a Tuesday. I don't have a select board meeting that day, which is great. But 5:30 till 6:15, anyone not available on Tuesday the 29th?
I can't commit to anything late April because I'm due with my baby then. So if I'm around, I will, but if I have a baby, then I'm probably gonna be down and out for a few weeks.
Oh, I understand that one, Christina. What is your due date, end of April or is it beginning of May?
April 28th.
yeah,
Ooh.
you need a couple hours off, will you?
yeah, just
Yeah, just a few hours.
that's my memory of it. Just a couple hours, all it takes.
Yeah. Spoken like a true man.
Well, Christina, that's a good day. I'm the 25th of April. That's why I'm gonna be away that week and I'm gonna be out in Arizona. So that's a good day.
Hey, who's giving the presentation?
I was planning on it, but we should.
Great. So moved.
Anyone else want to offer to give this
Hey,
presentation?
I'll be happy to stand up there and look like a schmuck with you.
All right.
I mean, if you want support, I can be up there if you want with you.
I mean, it's, you know, realistically, there's going to be some challenges this year. You know, as we've gone into this project, you know, even though we've done our work for a while, you know, the advertising, you know, it's going to be a push over the last, you know, really now 30 days, 3 weeks to kind of get the word out there. I think that because of the override on the school side, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I know I've already received emails saying, how can we afford a building project, but we can't afford a school override? And I think there's a lack of understanding of capital versus operational budgets. I think that, there's already a mantra out there that, hey, if we're firing 20 teachers, there's no way we're going to commit to spend any money on buildings. And, that's a realistic feeling that I think people have in the community. So, I mean, it's going to be an uphill battle no matter what. Tony, who is, you guys may not know this, but I have the highest respect for Tony Scalambrini. Ultimate respect for Tony. And even though he and I disagree from time to time, we do agree far more than we don't. And I think that, Tony's going to have some strong opinions as well that I think are going to give people some pause, as they should. So I mean, I think no matter what, it's an uphill battle this year. And sometimes, as we all know, these building projects take a couple of years to get them through, and they might even need some more modifications to them. But we've been informing the community about our progress along the whole way. And so I think it's important that we continue to move forward. And again, if we don't have the votes, then we kind of think about it. And does it mean go back to the drawing board, or does it mean that we start again, or try again rather?
I think,
But I'm
by
gonna
the
know
way, I think
reasons.
one of the things that you have to be prepared to answer is the capital projects are different than operational budget dollars, but capital projects lead to an increase in operational dollars. And I think that one of the biggest issues that we're going to get challenged on at the town meeting, there's actually two. One is why are we creating more new square footage when the town has, existing square footage that could be used? Now, I'm not a fan of TC Passios, but I am a fan of Turkey Hill. And the school committee is too, as evidenced by the fact that they're moving their operations to Turkey Hill. And I think that's going to be the big stumbling block, is that people are going to say, yeah, my taxes are going to go up a little for this capital project, but then we're going to create so much more square footage that's new. And the town already has a lot of excess square footage. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge you have, in particular, how it's going to impact the school.
Yeah. I think that that's definitely a worthy point. I think I can already hear Matt thinking in his head, because something that he and I have talked about before, which is that the schools have excess square footage, not the municipal side of the house. But nonetheless, I do recognize that, regardless, it is a conversation. The good thing is that these numbers, when we go through and compare them to what was in the Vertex report, or even the TAP-A study, I think one of them, I think it was the TAP-A that threw numbers out of what these things would cost. We're actually not too far off from them. And I do think it's worth, making sure we have that noted as well. But all right, I think we're kind of getting towards time here. Not that we have a rigid time limit, but we've talked about open houses, that they will be staff led. I owe you guys information on those dates and when we can take lead of them. We will have storyboards for them. I'm going to get Greg Roy some of the key pages from the work that Taylor and Burns did, so that way we have some printouts for folks during those tours. We have a presentation that I hope to get out to everyone by the end of the week, and then I'm looking for feedback on that over the course of the next 2 weeks. We will plan to meet on the 21st. We've rescheduled our meeting. We've added a meeting on the 29th for 5:30 till roughly 6:15, so that's good. We have some good feedback on the Brooks House, but of course, more work to do. I will follow up with the land use director. Greg Roy will also take a stab at this, and then hopefully we can have something in the works there. And then the only other thing that we have, I didn't give you the update. I met with the finance committee. I thought it went really well. We've met with the school committee, and I think I have another meeting with them coming up as well to talk about this one more time. And then the select board is voting on their support or not tomorrow night on this.
What,
And
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I don't want to gloss over the finance committee. Tom, I think I know, this is a little bit of a rhetorical question because I think I know the answer, but you guys voted to to
We-
recommend the
Yeah, we
article,
voted
correct?
to approve it, 5-1. I think it was 6 people there, so there was one dissenting. It was 6-1 or 5-1.
Yeah, well, anyway, I didn't want to, I wanted to make sure that was part of our public record.
Right?
And Tony, what Tony had mentioned, we got some feedback about operating costs. We don't know it, and how can we, so there were a lot of questions about that.
Yeah,
Um,
unfortunately, we just never do.
Right, I know, and that's,
But you know, I think I thought about logging in and presenting in public comment on that point, but I didn't make it in time. Uh,
well, we were there till 11:30, so thank you for not calling in. We could have still been there if we wanted to.
Yeah. So, the consultants, I mean, with the energy codes the way they are today, this is gonna have to be a pretty efficient building to meet, current energy codes. And I think what we can say to this point is we're committing to, looking, the next process will be dedicated to looking at and studying those options that we have for efficiencies in the building. And weighing costs and operational costs and capital costs and all those things. So, that's sort of the one of the primary tasks of the next process when we finally get into the actual nuts and bolts designs of the HVAC systems of the building. Right now we have schematics specifications. That's all we have. We have schematic specifications and costs. We don't have anything more than that. So we can definitely commit on the floor of town meeting that will be first and foremost in the next process, should the town vote for it.
Dave, did you mean to share your screen?
I didn't mean to. I'm trying to find chat. I have to drop. I have a meeting and I'm supposed to be leading at 7. So
Yeah, I think
I'm running off.
Yeah, I think we're wrapping up here anyway. Greg, so we can do financial modeling. So I've responded to a couple of this. So the hardship here is that figuring out like long-term costs, right? You build a new building, you know that you're not, you're have to replace a roof in 25 years for the most part. And then, in about 10 years or so, 10 to 15, you have to do some painting again. But for the most part, you kind of put yourself in this, we would put ourselves in a situation, hopefully, where we eliminate any kind of capital needs for about 20, 25 years. When it comes to the cost per square footage and how much it costs to heat it, how much it costs to cool it, how much it costs to clean it. We already have those numbers for our existing buildings. I think that the hardship here is that this building is so much more efficient than our existing buildings that price per square foot doesn't follow, it doesn't carry over. What I do in our world, we can throw a number out there, and it's going to end up being somewhere between $3 and $4.50 a square foot for the most part. In terms of what that kind of maintenance utility costs generally are going to land. But there's going to be some savings on the other side of this, right? Where now you're taking town hall and you're not necessarily heating it and cooling it all day long. And so there will be some savings there. Town hall would be more efficient coming out of this project. Same thing on the Ritter building. So, we can figure out cleaning. That's an easy number to figure out, is the cleaning cost. The harder number to figure out is the utility cost. Because, do we do the solar panels? Do we not? That makes a huge impact. There's just a lot of variables at this stage of the game, but I think that, what we can present are some of the things that we've designed, like energy efficiency buildings, so that way we're not using as much, et cetera, et cetera. All right, I know folks got to jump, so let's get to the end of our meeting here. We do have some minutes to approve. We have minutes for February the 3rd and for March the 3rd. Brian was able to send those out to us. As always, those minutes look great. I will go ahead and move to approve the meeting minutes for March the 3rd and for February the 3rd.
Second.
A second.
All right, we have a second. I heard that, I think, from Tom Gray first. This could be a roll call vote. Mr. Allison.
Aye.
Mr. Roy.
Aye.
Mr. Gray.
Aye.
Ms. Masitis.
Hi.
And Mrs. Scalabrini.
Aye.
and an I for myself. All right, those minutes are approved. Those can be uploaded. And then the other thing we have in our agenda today is that's it. Future meeting scheduled 21st and the 29th at 5:30. I don't have public comments here at the end of the meeting, but are there any public comments from anyone on the board, APDC rep, anyone from the public? All right, the time is 6:58. I move to adjourn.
Second,
All right, we have a motion and a second. All right, Mr. Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Roy. I think you said aye, Ms. Gray.
Yep.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gray,
Aye.
Ms. Masitis,
I
Mr. Scullin-Brini,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. The time is 6:58. We are adjourned. Good to see everyone. And just as a reminder, Tony, please give some feedback on the presentation. Your critical eye will be very helpful here. And I know that, you are always a team player, even when it looks like we're disagreeing. I know you're a team player and I appreciate it. All right. Thanks, everyone.
thank you.